could have been doing probably 25, 30, 35 years ago, to try to get everybody out on the ground and see the same thing at the same time and kind of talk about the who, what, where, why, and how the management is going on these properties out here, both private and public. Pretty much we want the same things out here. And a lot of it has to happen with management and with good stewardship. And so the idea of these tours is to try to get as many people out on the ground, all the way from teachers and students, and we're fortunate to have 2 students here from Eagle Point High School. We need to start talking with people at this age and talk to them about the stewardship and the management that's going on these properties out. This kind of sums it up in towards a better understanding. Really, if we stop and think about it, our only true wealth comes from the utilization and wise management of our natural resources.
Again, welcome to Forest Capital's property. Real brief here, as best as I can make this. Again, I'm Ken Cummings, Region Manager for Forest Capital. 2002 was a big fire year for the state of Oregon. That was the year of the biscuit, largest fire in U.S. history at that time. But this was a lightning strike about 6 miles up the hill here on public land, primarily Forest Service. It blew up and went from 30 acres to 27,000 14 days later. Back on the cattle piece, we have some active leases up in this part of the world. If you look real closely at some of the lower parts of these trees and wander off the road before we go around the corner, you'll see evidence of the cows. I'm surprised they weren't standing on the road. Last time I was up here they were. You know, what we've experienced is it's totally compatible. All they do is help keep a lot of the grass and stuff down, and there's really no impact to a lot of these trees, even though they might break off limbs and so forth. After a fire, a little bit more dirt moves than maybe on a piece of property where you didn't disturb the dirt. But the real important thing is you come back up here 8 years later and see what's going on, and we can talk in a minute about the stream and what's going on there. But any stream in Oregon after it rains is completely filled with sediment, and I don't care how active or inactive the watershed is. And so the whole issue about active management is really about short-term and long-term risk, and what you're willing to accept and what you're willing to shoot for long-term. When this fire came down through this canyon particularly, it was probably moving at excess of 700 miles an hour, probably 150-foot flame lengths, and about 1,000 degrees. And I got to tell you, this hillside was probably as torn up and as hardly and harshly logged as anything I could imagine on top of the fire. And that's kind of why I like to come to this site, because if there's a site that's not going to ever grow trees again and going to look like a parking lot or be an ecological disaster, this is it.
Fire-adapted ecosystems in southwest Oregon and fire influence in this landscape, the need to actively manage a bigger portion of the landscape up front instead of waiting until this happens is critical for us to being successful in meeting not only our long-term water quality objectives, our long-term, I think, endangered species objectives with owls. I mean, owls, they adapted in a fire-influenced landscape, so in my mind, there needs to be some sort of active management to help promote long-term growth of future habitat. And I think if we don't do that up front and we're hindered in the back end with some of the reforestation, long-term I don't believe we'll get to where we want to be. Go with a broader approach to forest thinning across more of the landscape. So there are certainly areas where it may be appropriate for certain reasons to not have certain management, but we have 72% of our land base that's currently really not emphasized for much active management at all. So to have that opened up at a broader scale would be one of the more helpful things.
The economics of these places are really interesting, and you have to really pay attention to it. Probably the only business that I know of that you have to ask yourself, how much money do you need? And I could ask anybody that question and they'll always say, all I can get. You can't do it in this business. And this is where people like Don Hammond, who does our logging for us, really comes in. We sit down and have skull sessions and go out and mark trees and stuff like that, and decide how much we do need for that year. The biggest thing, this may be a little too down home and maybe a bit too cerebral, and I'll try not to get a tear in my eye in saying it. The biggest value on this place, as far as I'm concerned, you can't see it in a bank statement. We raised our kids here. You hire any one of my kids, you'll get $1 worth of work out of them. They don't even own a wristwatch. You know, it's not, hey, 4:30 quitting time. Like hell, we're castrating. You know, it's just the way it is. And I think that's the blessing of all blessings, as far as I'm concerned.
Bob, how do you use your cattle for managing your timberland?
Oh, okay, good. Ralph's question was, how do we use the cattle in managing of our lands, timberlands? Well, this place, when we bought it, was a sea, an absolute sea of teasel, bull thistle, and of course we are still combating Medusa head, but we're getting a leg up on that, and we've done it all with cattle. In fact, the fields you're looking at, case in point, have not had fertilizer on them in 15 years.
Wow.
Case in point. It's management.
Well, not chemical, heavy.
That's right.
The natural fertilizer.
This is it. It's all natural.
Do you seed clover, or is that just natural?
All natural. Well, this has been seeded probably 40 years ago. You know, we haven't reseeded it. Now, this is extremely labor intensive. I mean, I just can't sit back here and have a G&T and watch the grass grow or anything like that.
Can we?
Bob is a real good example of holistic management, and that no commercial fertilizer on the field is an example. And we do the same thing with the timber. We just thin it and let the wood rot down for the next generation of trees. We've always kind of thinned from below and left the best genetics. And we've tried to, hi Bob, we've tried to always leave enough shade. We didn't grow back too much brush too fast, but we still have the trees growing in a healthy state. And especially out on the west side, he's got some beautiful timber out there. It's just breathtaking. We've got sugar pines like this and Doug firs like this. And we do some unusual things. The other day we made 2 snags out there that were both cull trees, taking a lot of nutrients from some good trees, some really nice young Doug fir like this. So it looks so nice out there that the BLM people thought it was their land, and they sold a bunch of burros off of that land out there, which is it's a compliment both ways, because that looks good and so does John's work. That's great. But Bob and Judy's long-term goals are different than industry or a lot of other people. So again, what we do here doesn't work for everybody else, and not bad-mouthing anybody else. It's just a different situation. And it works. We treat the areas where he feeds his cows in the winter different than we do that area out there. It's a little more productive, and it's interesting. We get fertilizer in these areas where he feeds his cows all winter when he doesn't feed on the pasture. So the trees get a little boost from that, but they lose a little bit from the top surface root disturbance and the compaction too. I think you can kind of see that. So it's a give and take, and that's what managing our resources is all about. It's about we're moving this stand to a point where someday somebody can live on this ranch and take care of the cows and go out and harvest 1 tree a month, but it'll be a big tree, and they can bring it in and saw it on the sawmill, and they'll have some good quality lumber, and they can hit those niche markets, and they can get top dollar for that, and they can get top dollar for their beef, and hopefully they can make a living like they should and enjoy the lifestyle and the aesthetics and the overall austere of the ranch.
We've had some questions on the atrazine. We talked about that. This watershed's multiple use. There's camping, hunting, fishing up here as well as recreation. There is cattle grazing that goes on the watershed. We have done a master plan that fences the cattle out of the immediate area of the springs in what we call Protection Zone 1.
And I'm open to any comments and suggestions. Like I said, I'd like to see us, I think this was a great start today. I'd like to see us be able to expand on it and really get more of a cross-section of people out here. I appreciate having all the folks that are running for county commissioner out here today, and wish you all the biggest success hopefully everybody got to get some out here. I would really love to get more environmental organizations out here. I really appreciate having young people from Eagle Point High School. If we could have that bus loaded with 40 more just like them, I think it would be fantastic, because I think they need to hear and see these things as much as anybody. And so that's kind of what I guess I got out of today. I would like to see these tours continue if we can. The district is willing to put some effort in it, and I think hopefully most of the sponsors would be willing to put some effort into it too if we can continue it.